You're listening to Discography Discussion, episode 107, Converge, presented by discussmetal.com. And if you think an impossible game is made more fun by impossible vocals, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe, that is Dan, that is Jeff. Did everybody else have a good week listening to Converge?
I had a fantastic week.
I know I had an amazing week.
I don't know about this asshole over here.
It was average. Oh, I know. I'm going to get my ass handed to me today.
You hear that, Jake Bannon? Jeff said your shit was average.
I said I had an average week. I didn't say that it was the music's fault.
Okay, well, you're going to have to prove that to me. This week, we're talking about Converge, one of my favorite bands, so brace yourself.
If you hear something hitting the microphone, that's Dan's.
There's that fucking beep again.
Now Joe's going to turn me down. You never get to hear me for the rest of the episode.
Well, before Dan starts talking about one of his favorite bands and Jeff and I just sit back and watch, I'm going to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, then you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, so if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening, and now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
We love 5-star reviews here on Discography Discussion, and the reason we like them is because they make us feel better. But you know what? You leave us whatever kind of review you think we deserve. But leaving us reviews helps us. And the way it helps us is it helps us come up in search results. When you're listening to an awesome metal podcast that's not this one, it's going to recommend this one. And the reason it's going to recommend it is it's going to see all those reviews that you left on our podcast. So leave us whatever kind of review you think we deserve, and then we will thank you accordingly. We will read it on the show. And that is all you need to know about how you can help us for free.
We got a comment on episode 101, Killswitch Engage. This is a tweet from DJ M. I was really impressed with how you guys handled Killswitch Engage's overall body of work. I was actually a bit hesitant to listen to this episode, as I thought maybe you guys might go all original metalcore elitists on Killswitch. Their self-titled debut is still one of the best heavy debuts.
I think that was aimed at me.
Yes, I believe so as well.
I was too tired to argue.
Which episode was it that we got into the metalcore elitist argument and the shit?
Was that the Tetelestai?
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, that was that episode. Because I was like, hey, what about Killswitch Engage? And they're like, that's not metalcore.
Yeah, I showed my true colors on that one. I can't help it. I was with like-minded people. And Tetelestai is actually having a debut full-length coming out soon, so watch out for that.
Yeah, we'll have to check that out. Maybe do a Patreon episode on that album.
That'd be great.
Speaking of Patreon, we have 2 comments from our patrons. This is on episode 39. We talked about Vane's 2018 album, Error Zone. Patrick Asplund flies in and says, my favorite album of 2018.
Yeah, he literally flew in like a fucking bird of prey.
Just dive bomb. Straight in.
With like a banner with his comment. And that's the kind of commenting that we like here on the show.
Zach Barr left a comment on episode 102, My Ticket Home. Really enjoy the content. Keep up the great work. And I'm hoping for a Gwar episode someday.
Hail Orderus.
Yeah, someday's right.
Someday when Dan's not here.
I just don't want to listen to that many albums, dude. Even if they are a lot of fun.
Yeah, they are fun, but that's like, okay, hey guys, we're going to do Gwar in 5 months. Start listening now.
That's basically what happened for Cannibal Corpse, right?
So what are you guys thinking, like November for Gwar? November of 2020?
It might take that long.
Well, if we're not all dead by then.
So Dan, tell me about your favorite band, Converge.
Converge is not my favorite band. That would be Zao. But Converge is definitely in there in the top 5. There's a reason for that. They are a hardcore punk band formed in Salem, Massachusetts, and they are the shit. They are one of the most aggressive bands I've ever heard in my life. They built up from a strong hardcore base, went heavily into metalcore in the late 90s, early 2000s, and haven't looked back. They are one of the heaviest, most chaotic, and extreme bands I've ever heard. Change my mind.
I don't think we're going to.
I think you can try. You guys did a good job changing my mind about Pantera, right?
I think
we had help.
I think you're pretty accurate on that one, though. They're fucking brutal, man, in a good way.
terrifyingly brutal.
Yeah.
And they have humble beginnings. And as we tend to do on this show, we're going to start there at the very beginning. In 1994's Halo in a Haystack.
Good luck finding it.
Now, you may be surprised
I had to go to YouTube.
that you can't walk into your local record store because they don't exist anymore and ask for a copy of Halo in a Haystack. You will not find it. You might find it on eBay for hundreds of dollars, as it was released only on vinyl. It's a hard-to-find record. But luckily, we've got YouTube, and YouTube is what carried us through. What did you guys think about Halo in a Haystack by Converge?
Definitely not the same Converge that you have been shoving down my throat for over 20 years at this point.
Suck it down.
But I enjoy listening to where a band came from when it was basically punk rock or bad thrash metal with somewhat hardcore vocals.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like a basement show.
Nothing wrong with that if you're a fan, right?
If you watch the old Converge DVD, they played a lot of fucking basement shows, man. But there's little hints and seeds in here.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. That's not a bad place to start.
It reminds me a lot of 90s hardcore. The vocals were more extreme than what I was used to. They're not what they're going to become. It's still more of like a hardcore shout, a yell, but he does it with an intensity that I think a lot of hardcore singers didn't have, whereas pretty much any hardcore between like 1985 and 1995 was predominantly just yelled. And this is much more like screechy screaming. And he does have the yelling in there as well and like kind of a hardcore punk sort of sound to it, but for the most part, it is just a couple notches higher than what most hardcore vocalists were doing in 94.
In contrast to the thrash metal yell, which is just this level of growl for 55 minutes.
Correct.
Dude sounds kind of feral to me. Raised up in the woods or something.
I don't know the answer to that. From all I understand, that Jake Bannon's a pretty old soul.
So maybe he was.
Pretty well cultured. But man, his art is just like the diary of a madman.
Yeah, it's intense, dude. It's crazy. I don't mean that bad. I just mean it's like, wow, this is a lot to take in.
Well, I think part of what made this band so cool back then, though, is they were groundbreaking. Now, this record doesn't sound like that. It sounds like a hardcore record. It sounds actually kind of like what some of the old Neurosis albums sounded like before they went full Neurosis. And you can say the same thing about Converge. This is Converge before they went full Converge.
Converge before Converge, right?
It was.
And I think we said that on the Neurosis episode, too. We said this is Neurosis before Neurosis.
Yeah, and so this isn't the most interesting record in the world. I mean, there's going to be there's commenters on YouTube that say, like, oh, this is so groundbreaking. It's the best thing they ever put out. But those people are idiots. I mean, obviously, this is much better.
This is, I'm a hipster, and I'm going to spend $400 on that vinyl on eBay.
You could do that if you want. I haven't done that yet. Once we get enough Patreon subscribers,
that's your first
eventually
purchase.
We'll be able to make bullshit purchases like that. But for the time being, I'm going to listen to this on YouTube. I'm going to enjoy it, but it is not going to be my go-to Converge album. I think it sounds cool. It's an interesting historical document, but I don't think it represents the Converge that we're talking about tonight.
It's not groundbreaking at all. I disagree with anybody that says that.
Well, I think it's groundbreaking in the sense of it being 1994 and it being as extreme as it was, but it still doesn't hit that much harder than most of your mid-90s hardcore albums.
From a music standpoint, what difference is the vocals, is what you're saying.
Right, and keep in mind, they couldn't really produce this. Like, these songs would sound a lot better probably if they re-recorded them with modern recording.
Right.
But as they stand right now, it all just kind of gets muddled together. The production works against it.
Yeah, it's kind of weird looking back that 1994 is essentially like the Stone Ages.
Of this kind of music, absolutely. Because nobody was really playing metalcore in 94.
No, I just mean from, like, you were talking about equipment and recording and all that kind of jazz, too. I mean...
Yeah, this was definitely done on a budget.
Yes. And the budget nowadays, what they had now, could make you sound unbelievable with the same amount of money.
And well, I think that their next album, Petitioning the Empty Sky, huge step up in the production department.
Yes.
Now, this record's really interesting because Converge doesn't consider this to be a full-length record. This has about 7 or 8 songs on it and then a couple of live songs. But for the rest of us, this is basically their second record because it's newer production and it's a lot closer to the Converge that we know today. Whenever I talk about old school metalcore being a whole bunch of parts thrown together, this is exactly what I'm talking about. These songs are like a puzzle. You put certain aspects together in such a way to have your songs but it's still like play this riff for 10 seconds, play this other one for this amount of time, and the vocals are all screamed, growled, and they sound a hell of a lot better than they sounded on Halo in a Haystack.
I believe I once referred to that as predictability in chaos. It's not really chaotic when what you're doing is exactly what I'm expecting. You're going to do whatever that is, and then you're going to stop and then do something else.
Right. And I think that's okay here. This is actually one of my favorite Converge albums because it's somewhat unpredictable. It doesn't really follow a formula because they're still getting their feet wet and they're figuring out, like, how do we take this style that we came up with and make it interesting to listen to, but also keep it as extreme as we can.
Yeah, this is them experimenting to find that formula, so to speak.
And I think largely it succeeds. I think by the time you get to the end of this, you can start understanding where the Converge now comes from. I think if you go back to Halo in a Haystack, you got to really look for it. I think here it's much more evident. And like to me, I almost consider this to be the first Converge record because it sounds more like actual Converge than Halo did.
Yeah, but this was like under a half hour, though, wasn't it?
This is a very short record.
So I can understand why they considered it an EP, because that's...
Well, a lot of the releases are on the shorter side.
Yeah, but most of them are over a half hour, if I'm not mistaken.
What I like about this record is that Jake Bannon's vocals are very human sounding on this one. He's still growling, but he's nowhere close to what we were going to get just one record next. Like he screams and growls, and it's a lot more in line with that later 2000s metalcore, you know, with the raspy, growly, screamy stuff. And he almost completely abandons a lot of the hardcore punk style vocals, which he will actually go back to on later releases.
You see, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on that. I think part of the reason why I do like his vocals pretty much through his entire career is that he sounds like a human doing inhuman things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can hear you on that. I just think on this record in particular, I think he sounds more human than he does on, say, Jane Doe.
Right.
Or You Fail Me, where he sounded almost otherworldly. I think on Patreon, Jeff, you described it as sounding like a spirit trapped between two planes of existence.
Yeah.
Maybe something trying to force its way into our world.
But I think on Petitioning in the Empty Sky, you had more interesting riffs. You had a much harder edge to the way the guitar sounded. That was one of the big ones, is you weren't in 90s crunch mode anymore. This was all about experimenting with feedback and chaos and dissonant riffing, which was really not present before. And to keep it at kind of a neck-snapping pace must have been really difficult. I mean, some of these songs have to be pretty hard to pull off. And it's not that it's overly technical. It's just weird, and there's a certain sense of, like, how do they pull that off?
Yeah, it's definitely frenetic, and that's probably the word I'd use. Because, like you said, you don't know what's coming next. And especially, like, for me, with some other stuff, it was the first time I listened to it this go-around. It was like, okay, oh, shit, I wasn't expecting that. You know, because normally whenever you get into a groove with a band, you know, it does get formulaic to the point of, like, you kind of know what's coming next, even if you haven't heard the song, because you kind of got the vibe and the feel for a band, and that is not Converge at all.
There's only one real complaint I have on this record, and that's the cleans. There's clean vocals, and they sound like absolute shit. And I don't know if that's on purpose. It's probably on purpose. There's got to be some artistic reason as to why they did that. And I've always felt that way about Converge's clean vocals, is I'm like, why are they even there, number one? And number two, why do they sound so bad? It's like a lot of, like, it just sounds bad. And I don't know if they were, like, trying to keep up with some sort of punk rock aesthetic with that, where they're like, no, the clean vocals have to be bad. We don't want people to think we're putting out some pop shit.
What, I guess Jane Doe, and there's another one that I'm trying to think of. It's escaping my mind, where I didn't mind the clean vocals at all.
In Jane Doe, they were better. Here, they're just really bad. And it really drags the record down for me, because this is where they first start to try to experiment with, like, slowing the pace down and making these, like, more atmospheric dirges that they would do to much greater success on later records. But the problem with this one is that I feel like these break up the flow. Instead of them being their own songs, they are kind of smashed in the middle of, like, a song that starts off really aggressive, goes into this slow, annoying dirge, and then goes back to aggressive. And I think it just fits in the whole, like, they wrote all these riffs and then they put it into a computer and it just randomized the order in which they played everything. And I realized in 96 they didn't do that, but that's how it sounds to me. So I don't think this one flows. It's weird talking about flow with a chaotic hardcore band like this, but, you know, it doesn't flow like their later records would flow.
You want to crash into Forever now?
I guess we can.
1998, When Forever Comes Crashing.
This is one of my favorite Converge albums.
Is it now?
This is where they really started sounding like Converge to me. Jake Bannon's vocals are inhuman. They reach a pitch that I can't even fathom. Like when I heard Zao for the first time, I was like, oh my God, this is really fucking extreme. And then I heard Converge, and I was like, oh my God, this is even more fucking extreme. This is music that's hard to listen to.
I would agree with that.
And it's not a problem. I mean, I go into a Converge record expecting it to sound like this. However, they have this sense of urgency to them that, like, you feel like you ever play Super Mario Brothers and you're playing that level where it scrolls with you. If you don't go fast enough, you get crushed against the screen.
Right.
That's what listening to When Forever Comes Crashing is like. Because there's an immediacy to get through the songs. And the songs are not overly long, but they're so chaotic and they're so fast and they're so in your face. And it's just an assault on your ears. And I love that about it because I think this is the first time they've achieved true chaos.
Yeah, it was probably a good thing that my blood pressure was not checked at work this week. And it's a good thing that I didn't have a panic attack.
You feeling a little aggressive this week?
It kind of like freaked me out to more than felt like I was going to rip somebody's head off. I was like, holy shit. What the fuck's coming next? You know,
I am not comfortable. I am not okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like to me. And I'm like, my God, I hope a customer doesn't call and is all pissed off because I'm like going to like snap at him and then tell him I'm sorry and I'm freaking out.
The phone rings. Geoff picks it up and goes, ah!
What the fuck do you want, Jane Doe? Oh, wait, we're not there yet.
No. But we're getting close. This record is extremely chaotic. I love the production value of it, and they actually add a little bit of melody into some of the riffing, which is completely unexpected. And similar to Dillinger Escape Plan, when they do something melodic, I'm a little worried. I'm like, oh God, what are they going to do next? I have no idea what this band's going to do next, and that makes me personally uncomfortable.
Even after all these years, listening to these albums, you're still surprised.
I can be, yeah. Yeah, going back to Petitioning and When Forever Comes Crashing, I was surprised.
Yeah, especially if it's been a while since you listened to it, or if you're like I was doing, because I listened to a lot of this at work. I think that's part of the reason why it kind of fucked me up a little bit. Was like you don't see it coming. You're like, holy shit, what the, even though I was, it wasn't the first time I listened to it that week even, but I was just like, oh, wow. I was not expecting that.
I think this is the first Converge album where I felt like there was a kind of a beautiful expression going on with it too, though. And not to get all artsy about it, but
you're going to.
I am a little bit, because one of the coolest things about Converge to me is the visual aspect of it as well. Jake Bannon, their singer, does a lot of the actual artwork for most of their releases.
Really?
If not all. It might be all, but he does all of it, or he does a lot of it. And I can tell you that the visuals actually match what you're hearing.
Interesting.
Because you have very abstract kind of caricatures of things, and you have to really sit there and look at it before you can figure out what the actual picture is. And I think the music really matches that a lot of the times, whereas like your focus might be on what he's saying, or it might be, just in the guitar distortion. It's almost like you're trying to make sense of the world with all this shit coming at you from every angle.
Okay,
and
so
that's what the
band, a normal day.
Yeah, but that's what the band sounds like.
Right. I will say this: if he did the cover for Jane Doe, holy shit!
Yeah, I mean, he's a talented guy.
I was already jealous that he could make that, make his voice do what it does, because I don't think anybody else can do what he does.
We can get you there, Geoff. I'll just punch you in the throat 7 or 8 times and then make you give a speech.
It definitely hurts. Like, as a vocalist myself, I couldn't imagine doing anything like this.
Yeah, and the fact that he's done it for this long, I'm just like, what's this guy's magic recipe to make this happen? Because it's insane. And then throwing in his fantastic artwork. I didn't know about the art. Normally, I look up those little teeny tiny facts, but it was a lot to listen to this week, so I didn't get into doing a lot of the little details that I like to do. But my God, this dude is friggin' talented. That's awesome.
Well, since you brought it up, with minor exceptions, the look of their records, it's very consistent. It's one of their trademarks in my eyes.
Yeah, it's very consistent. That's what's great about having somebody that's dedicated to the visual fidelity of the band. I think the band we talked about a few weeks ago, Me Without You, was the same way. They had the same artist do all of their stuff.
Right.
However, their artist wasn't their lead singer. Converge has always been a very do-it-yourself band. It's like whatever you can bring to the table, bring it to the table. I know we've been talking a lot about Jake Bannon on this, but you can't leave Kurt Ballou out of the equation. This guy has a guitar tone that heavily solidifies the band as a hardcore punk band. Like, yes, it's easy to call them metalcore, but it's not. Really, it is hardcore punk with chaotic metalcore influences.
It's a buzzsaw.
I know it's going to make me sound like a total metal elitist, and I don't apologize. His tone is so grating to me. It is like a buzzsaw. It never makes me feel good. And even on the slower, more melodic stuff, it almost makes me feel sick. Like, it's just the atmosphere is so heavy on some of those slower songs that I just feel sick. I get like a melancholy feeling when I'm listening to it. It's not really a band that makes me feel happy to listen to, but I'm okay with it. You know, I know what I signed up for.
The dude is a very prolific producer as well. He produced this album, did he not?
Yeah, Kurt Ballou produces a lot of bands.
Yeah, everything. I saw that he produced Cave-In, and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
When are we going to do a Cave-In episode?
We can do a Cave-In episode, in a few weeks, man. I'm down for that anytime you want to do it.
I figured you would be.
Love me some Cave-In. But yeah, When Forever Comes Crashing, in my eyes, is the first Converge record that sounds like Converge.
I think it's the first one that Kurt produced as well.
That could be why, because we've had a consistent sound since then.
Yep.
So let's move on to the elephant in the room.
Jane Doe.
Jane Doe, 2001.
And one.
One of my most favorite 11-minute tracks.
This is a barn burner of an album. You thought When Forever Comes Crashing was extreme? This is like, what, 8 times more extreme than that?
This is like a meat tenderizer.
This is where we go into almost grindcore territory.
Maybe that's why we like it so much, and we'll find out how much Joe likes it because we know how much he loves grindcore.
Well, it's not like it's grindcore. It's feedback soaked. Like, it's so chaotic that it sounds very grindy. But I don't think that was the intent. I don't think they're like, we're going to do this grindcore part here. Like, it just is so extreme that there's almost no other way to categorize it. You get past a certain point, like, because what we're listening to right now, it sounds like grindcore to me.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree.
If they go into Pig Destroyer territory.
Well, that's what I was asking what Joe thought about it, because I know he's not the biggest in grindcore fandom.
We talked about it on Patreon, so I'm not going to spoil it, but I will say Jane Doe is an acquired taste of an album in that the chaotic metalcore, grindcore-esque style is itself an acquired taste. You have to decide you want to listen to this. Nobody's going to be listening to a playlist of their favorite songs and then have something come up from Jane Doe and be satisfied moving on from that song. You have to decide you want to listen to an album like this.
It's in a lot of my playlists. The whole thing.
The whole thing is a playlist unto itself.
It's no surprise that this was a heavily influential record for the genre. It is considered one of the classic metalcore albums. And it's funny because if your definition of metalcore is like a As I Lay Dying or a Killswitch Engage, you're going to listen to this and be like, this is something totally different. And it is. But it pushes metalcore to as extreme as metalcore can go. And actually goes past the line quite a bit. I love Jane Doe. I think it's the perfect mix of chaos and atmosphere because this is one of the first albums where they really start slowing things down. And you start getting some of those more lengthy atmospheric tracks. I call them dirges because that's kind of what they are. They're not clean, happy sounding. It's not like, how you used to have death metal bands that would, do like 8 songs of down-tuned death metal and then like one song that's like a beautiful guitar instrumental. It's not like that at all. There's nothing beautiful on this record.
Yeah, the others are like an interlude, and this is more like a different, it's all pain, and this is just a lighter level of pain.
This is a interlude on life. Whatever's going on. And now you're listening to Jane Doe. Welcome back to reality.
This thing ends off with a motherfucker of an 11-minute song.
It's one of my favorites.
Called Jane Doe. And it's epic.
It is.
I remember one reviewer describing it as the end of the world as told best by indie rockers. And it's not that far off the mark. This is everything that like underground punk rock and noise music was building to. A record that is just, you have to be a certain kind of person to get it.
Yeah, this one's in my top 3, just for complete albums from them. but it's not my number one, but it's in my top 3.
It's really good. It's not my number one anymore. Used to be.
It's the album I'm the most familiar with from Converge.
I still love it. I love how extreme it is. I love how it makes me feel. The clean vocals are better.
Oh, yeah. They fit.
They fit a lot better than they did before, where they had to slow everything down.
Yeah, because
they build towards the momentum of the song.
Yeah, and it's not like, I'm not going to say the clean vocals are great, because I don't think he has a great clean singing voice.
I'm surprised he has a good talking voice at this point.
Yeah.
I think with Jane Doe, the best song on it, can I say what a best song is?
Sure.
Homewrecker. Homewrecker is a barn burner. I know I said the whole album was a barn burner before, but it is literally the best. I love the hell out of that song. It's got everything that you love about Converge in one song in it. I can't put it down. Distance and Meaning comes a close second, which has an almost melodic sounding chorus to it. That's right, a chorus.
I know, it's scary.
In that he makes the same grunting sounds over and over again over 3 bars, and they do it multiple times. So it's a chorus. Yay! You guys did it.
You played the same part more than once.
They could have quit after putting this out.
Because it's that good?
And people would have thought that they were the best band in the entire world ever. But they kept going. And for a lot of bands, after they reach their quote-unquote peak like this, it usually isn't a good thing. But in the case of You Fail Me in 2004, this is kind of a good thing.
Kind of a good thing? I think it's a great thing, dude.
They released an album for Geoff.
They did.
They were like, here you go, buddy.
Yeah, here's a news flash. No shocker. Jeff's favorite album.
Excuse me, Mr. Kane.
Yes.
You fail me.
Yes, I do.
It's the most...
Over and over again.
It's the most melodic Converge album, except maybe with the exception of Axe to Fall, which we'll get to a little bit later.
Yeah,
but we're talking 2 very different types of melodic.
This is 2004 when metalcore was not only defined, but was defined in 2 very separate genres. You were either the heavy metal style, Kill Switch Engage, As I Lay Dying, or you were doing what Under Oath was doing. Did everybody forget about Converge? I know Dan didn't forget about Converge.
I don't think anybody forgot about Converge.
I think Converge showed up at the Norma Jean show and said, we're here, guys.
This actually has a little bit of like Screamo influence.
That's actually something that I'm definitely going to agree with.
Because I'm a huge fan of stuff like Jerome's Dream and City Caterpillar and just stuff like that. And this, I got a very strong vibe from that genre on it. It's the first time I've ever really felt that way about a Converge record. But his use of more human-sounding vocals mixed with the screams definitely gave me a much bigger Screamo vibe on this. And I love that about it. It's one of the first Converge records that I listen to and kind of creates a certain feeling for me. And it all kind of builds together, but it still has that gut-punching extremity that the band was always famous for. That's all over the record. But now they're showing us like a little bit more of their human side.
Right, there's a bit of sensitivity to go with that brutality. And I think that actually just makes it work even better.
It works extremely well because all they had to do was put out Jane Doe again and we would have all been like, cool, let's do it.
Instead, they took the buzzsaw and put it in the ground and started digging a ditch with it.
Yeah, what's interesting is my 2 favorite songs are back-to-back on this album. And it's like a third
First Light, Last Light?
No, You Fail Me and In Her Shadow.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Just like back-to-back, I'm like, fuck, dude. This is amazing. And it's like, it's more than a third of the length of the album, just 2 songs, but perfectly happy with it. God, is it good.
They had a great video for Eagles Become Vultures, which is one of my favorite songs on the album. It's the first one I heard before immediately telling my boss that I was sick and then leaving work and going and buying the record. Yes, that actually happened. It was at a Burger King.
Nice.
I don't work there anymore. Actually, I didn't work there very much longer after that. Probably what happens when you come back 20 minutes later blasting Converge and you're like, I feel better. Can I come back to work now?
It was all those 8-hour overnight clean the store by yourself
fuck that
schedules that pissed Dan off and put him off.
I was like, Burger King,
I could be
you
here
fail me.
or I could be buying Converge.
Yeah, but the problem is in order to buy things, I have to be there for a certain amount of time.
I'm glad I never worked fast food when I was a teenager. I worked at a country club and had to deal with like weddings and having to dance the fucking Macarena. I truthfully would rather do that than and then mop floors at 2 o'clock in the morning at a Burger King.
This record they were actually kind of unhappy with, which is why they went back and redid it. They didn't re-record it, but it was remixed and remastered.
Oh, okay.
So you've got a You Fail Me Redux album out there.
I'm assuming that's what I've heard then.
You might have heard the original. They're both there. The original has a black cover and the Redux has a white cover. But You Fail Me was an incredible record, and one of the reasons why the newer generation of metalcore fans really latched on to Converge, because it was something a little bit more palatable. Because you can't show an As I Lay Dying fan Jane Doe. People are like, well, As I Lay Dying was really heavy back then. Yeah, they were, but like they weren't like Converge.
Right.
So, like Joe said, you have to make an actual decision whether or not you're going to listen to a band like this and really get into what they have going on. You Fail Me was a way to get people into Converge that maybe would never have given them a chance before. And don't get me wrong, it's not a mainstream record by any stretch of the imagination, but it's more palatable for Converge. And so I think they probably gained a lot of new fans with that release.
Gotcha. And I did not listen to Redo. I listened to the original with the black cover.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, to me, I'm not a mixing and mastering guy. Only people like Joe are going to be able to sit down and be like, oh, I see what you did there.
Well,
I don't. So
I haven't heard it at all.
In most cases, you're going to find it was an unnecessary change.
A lot of the time. It's something that was important to someone involved in recording it originally. So given the chance, they're like, hey, there's that one little thorn in my side about this record that I want to fix.
Yeah,
I'm guessing Kurt.
Sean, can we just redo the whole mix and take Dan, just turn him down, like, all the way?
All the way.
And then delete the tracks.
Perfect. That's fair.
2006.
So you know how I said that You Fail Me was a record that was more palatable and easier for people to get on board with Converge? Well, No Heroes is exactly the opposite of that.
Yes.
This is a motherfucker of a record.
So guys, I was listening to The Chariot, and I got this idea for an album called No Heroes.
I don't think that Converge is influenced by The Chariot.
I was talking about me.
Oh, okay.
But since we're going to go back to The Chariot now.
No, this is straight Converge. This is the Converge that we all know and love. They've just upped the game even more. They're like, we're going to go more extreme than Jane Doe.
100%. This could be grindcore.
This is an album that there was one point where I felt like I was being hit by a train. It's like there's a part that's just like, and like I feel like I'm like getting hit by cars and trains and all kinds of things. And it just keeps going, dude. Like it doesn't let up. The first 6 or 7 tracks are just like beat you over the head over and over and over and over again. And it's like, oh yeah, you want more? You want more?
No, it's like rip your arm off and beat you over the head with it.
It's like when a cop pulls you over for running a stoplight, and he just starts punching you over and over and over and over again, and you're like, stop, stop, stop. And he's like, you want me to stop or just slow down?
That's excellent.
Which is what they, you guys? Which is what they do about halfway through the album.
What was funny, I was listening to this on the way down here, and when I got to the stoplight here in town, right after getting off 55, everybody around was like looking like, where the fuck is that wall of noise coming from? I'm like, that's from the motherfuckers.
Jeff's got the windows down. Doesn't care if it's raining or anything.
No, I didn't even have the windows down. That's just how fucking loud I had it. It was really loud, and I was enjoying the shit out of myself and making everybody else around me shit their pants because they're like, oh my God, a demon's coming through my car. Or it's in that car with that guy, at least. This is right around the time that I started embracing the chaos and enjoying the brutality.
Is it because they got you on You Fail Me? You knew that they had that in the pocket, so you were more willing to forgive that they weren't a one-trick pony?
Yes. I think that really had something to do with it.
One song that is... Sorry, it's just so crazy sounding.
Dan can't even move on to his next point.
I can't concentrate listening to this. But track 8, Grim Heart / Black Rose, is a 9-minute song. And it's kind of a slower melodic build-up with some really good clean vocals. And that really balances out this record. Because you could fit, like a lot of the earlier songs we were talking about that are like a minute and a half, 2 minutes long. You could fit like 3 of those in the length of this. But this was one of the first Converge songs that I was like, holy shit, this is kind of scary. Like it starts off very slow and there's singing and and then it just builds and builds and builds and builds, and then you hear Jake Bannon's screams come in, and you're just like, oh my God, I feel like I'm being stalked and murdered.
Yeah, this would be more... This song is more like the psychological thriller of a movie instead of having that, I guess, like, a lot of the other stuff is just, like, straight up, like, slasher gore fest. Like how... It's a different kind of shock, I guess you could say.
Time is on my side, and John Goodman's gonna kill you. I feel like that's what I'm listening to.
Yeah, and I love this song because of the psychological effect it has.
Yeah, that's what
they
I
create
guess
horror. They create horror with how they sound, not with what they say.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to get at. This is more psychological thriller instead of like straight up slasher flick like some of their other songs tend to be. I do enjoy the build up.
Yeah, and it was a welcome relief from what we had before. Like, such a welcome relief. Because, dude, you've already been beaten in the head 8 times in a row now.
I think I just became like a masochist and just started enjoying the shit. That's why I like grindcore, you know?
I'm surprised you didn't go back to the old albums and, you know, go back to When Forever Comes Crashing and enjoy what they had going on there.
There's just, even though this stuff is like just, it's really brutal, does it make sense it's got polish on it?
You like it because it sounds more well-produced?
I think so. Which is weird because we talked about how I didn't listen to Redo and was perfectly fine with it. But yeah, I really, really, really like this. And the next album...
Yeah, let's move on to my personal favorite, Axe to Fall.
Yeah, this is number 2 for me.
2009.
Sorry, I just have to hear that intro.
The punk rock takes over.
Oh, but then the metal takes over. They get kind of shreddy on this album. But that is like some crazy shit, you know? And I love how it sounds. It's super melodic and very noodly and not something I expect out of Converge. And I'm okay with it because it's still just as extreme as anything else. And I like that his vocals have taken more of a hardcore punk approach, which I feel like really he hasn't done since the earlier albums. Did a little bit on No Heroes, but on Axe to Fall, it's a lot more front and center, and I think it fits better.
You kind of hit on something. I think one of the reasons why we enjoy Converge is it's to expect the unexpected. And the fact that they have the chops to do pretty much whatever the fuck they feel like, you know, that's enjoyable. Whenever you got somebody that like, there is no box that I step out of. We just make music, and if either you like it or you don't, if you don't like it, fuck you. We love it. That's kind of the vibe I get from them. I don't know if that's accurate or not. You know, Daniel would know more than I would on that, but that's just kind of the feeling I get.
And I like Converge. I'm not criticizing them as a whole. In fact, quite the opposite. But when all you do is play that part, play that dissonant, play that part, play that dissonant, and scream, no matter how random and chaotic you're trying to be, you inevitably become predictable. In a way, this is well thought out because it has some form that is not intentionally chaotic. Meaning the guitars are not just chunk, dissonant screech. They actually build the riff and then allow it to be chaotic.
Well, yeah, I think in the early days it was just what you said, Joe. It was play a chunk and then go into a dissonant riff and then scream. Let's just be extreme, be extreme, be extreme. But at this point, we've really seen a huge growth in their songwriting skill. Now this shit's all being laid out on paper before they just go in and blast it out. And it benefits from that. You can hear that as the listener. And you can be assured that you're going in a path that was laid out prior to your hearing it.
I like Jane Doe, but this is their best album to date.
Axe to Fall is great. There's not a whole lot of negative I can say about it. It's just as heavy as any other Converge. If you're only here for Godzilla, the old Converge is still here in full effect. But they do a lot of really cool new shit.
Yeah, and they also, this is kind of like an all-star album to a certain extent, too, with some of the guests they had on it. So, which I'm not surprised on. It's a lot of our favorite artists that we've actually already covered. Genghis Tron.
Yep.
Neurosis. and our soon to eventually be covered Cave-In.
There you go.
So, I mean,
Jeff's just taking that and running with it. On this date, at this time, Dan said we're talking about Cave-In. That means it's happening.
You don't have to convince me to talk about Cave-In, dude.
No, we got to convince.
I'm fine with it. Joe likes Cave-In.
Okay, then what? Why the fuck haven't we done it?
I don't know.
Do we need to do a record scratch and start the whole episode over now and talk about
just
Cave-In?
talk about Cave-In instead? No.
No. We like Converge.
I got
No,
an
we gotta
idea
give-
for April 1st.
We got to give Kurt and the boys, a little, give them their day. I love Axe to Fall. I like it because it's melodic, it's heavy, it's extreme, it's unpredictable, and it's the entire package for Converge. I don't have a lot of negatives to say about it. It's just a great record, and people will be complaining. Weirdly enough, guys, let's get this out on the floor. At first, people complained that our episodes were too long. And now that we've started doing shorter episodes, now people are complaining that the episodes are too short.
To be fair, we're not doing shorter episodes. We're talking about bands that you can't really break down. They're just good.
What do you want me to say? It's another Converge album, and it's great.
I think the other thing, too, is connoisseurs of metal, we're becoming less critical. It just in the fact that it seems like we tend to, we've opened our ears a little bit more, and we tend to like a lot more than what we did originally. Because if you would have asked me 2 years ago, hey, what do you think of Pig Destroyer? I'd say it's fucking stupid. I mean, seriously, that's what it comes down to, is that I actually really enjoy grindcore in deathcore now. And I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as I did 2 years ago. And I'd like to think that, Dan can handle some of my ridiculous, melodic death metal shit that I tend to throw at people, with violins and bullshit like that. So, everybody's essentially just opened their eyes a little bit more and is more agreeable to listening to something different. In other words, our comfort zone is just bigger than what it used to be.
I don't know, man. There's some Society's Finest fans that might disagree with us on that.
Yeah, but we all shit on it, is my point. There wasn't one person shitting on it and two others defending it. And we had a lot of that in the beginning, and that just really took us off on tangents, and we argued a lot more. And that's the reason why we had 2.5 hour episodes, is because all we did was just bicker.
Tangents, like this one.
Yes. So here I am trying to extend the episode, motherfucker, so I hope you enjoy it.
Don't make me get John Beatty in here.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
Hold my beer.
4-hour episode. Well, let's see if we can run this motherfucker all night long.
All I can tell you is that all that we love, we leave behind.
Oh.
Which was the
Segue.
2012 release by the band Converge, who we're talking about tonight. I like this one. It's kind of like if you want to call Axe to Fall Jane Doe. All We Love, We Leave Behind is kind of like the You Fail Me to this Jane Doe. This was a more sensitive album to me.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I think it's number 4 for me. It's not like there's such a thing as a bad album. It just depends on
Converge.
By Converge,
because there's very much a thing.
Okay.
Such a thing as a bad album.
Thing, Jeff.
See Mushroomhead.
Yeah, I just mean in this particular episode. Yeah, there's no bad Converge album. It really just depends on how the mood strikes you. And I have noticed that quite a bit with this listen through. It really depended on my mood to tell you on which album I liked more. And I think that's all that it was, is that in such a tight time frame, and as bipolar as I am, this one probably just didn't hit me at the right time. I think I was probably ready to kick ass and take names, and I'm like, no, this is a little too sensitive for me at this moment. But if I listen to it at the right time, I'd probably fucking love it.
I really like this, and I really liked it when it came out.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I don't like it, because I do like it. It's just that I don't think I was in the right mood. I don't think there's anything wrong with the album.
Yeah, I think as a meathead, part of me was like, I don't understand why this isn't as heavy as Axe to Fall was.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at. I think that's really what it was. Here I am. I'm like, okay, let's keep this snowball going down the hill and see how many fucking bodies we can take with us.
It's got that old school screamo sound to it, though, that I liked so much on You Fail Me. And so I think this is a perfectly great album by Converge. I don't think it's the best representation of their style and their sound. And again, I'm not saying that it's bad, but it may not be what you're expecting if your favorite albums are like Jane Doe, No Heroes, Axe to Fall. you're not going to get that Converge out of All We Love, We Leave Behind. And that's okay.
I think this album helps to answer a question that a lot of people have about hardcore punk. What is the appeal of this 90-second song that doesn't have a verse and a chorus? It has two pieces put together, and then the band is done in 20 minutes.
It's like a sandwich.
An album like this, the band is harnessing the energy of punk rock. I think sometimes bands use dissonance in place of energy to try and create the feeling of energy, whereas something like this, or like Me Without You from back in the day, might just be a shit ton of coffee. Yeah, if you get that much caffeine in your system, you're going to be up.
I like this record a lot, and this really held me over because I had to wait a considerable amount of time before I got another Converge record, and there was part of me that thought that was just it. I don't understand why, though. They were touring. They were playing frequently, but I was just like, when the hell are we going to get a new Converge album? But instead, we had to wait 5 years. And to me, 5 years might as well be like 500 years. Because like if you put that in perspective, like we've been doing this show for 2 years now, and we've covered over 100 bands. So like times that by 2 and then add a year, that's insane. An insane amount of time to wait for a band like Converge.
So 250.
Yeah, it was rough.
Wow. Hard math.
Episode 250. We'll be talking about the new Converge album.
Right. Or the new Tool album, hopefully, right?
Oh, God. I'd like to think it comes out before then. So Trespasses, which we got playing in the background, is probably my favorite.
That's a good one.
On here, I don't know what yours is, but...
I like Trespass a lot.
That's your favorite, too?
Yeah. It's just got a good combination of old and new, but it's overproduced is the only issue I have with it. Like, it's heavy and great and wonderful and all that stuff. But these records do sound way more produced than the older ones, so they don't always have that crunch like they should. Please understand, if you show this to Grandma, it's still terrifying.
See,
unless Grandma is super cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of, I feel the same way about a lot of my bands, though, that I think that I like, that a lot of people give me shit about sometimes. I was going to say, like, one that I get grief on quite a bit that's overproduced would be like Gojira, especially like Elephant Sauvage, The Wild Child. Like, yeah, I get that it's overproduced, but I think it's overproduced to perfection kind of thing, if that makes any sense.
There's a difference between putting time into something and just plugging in cables and pushing buttons until it sounds theoretically perfect.
Isn't that what you do, Joe?
Every single week.
There you go.
If I could copy and paste all the mistakes that Geoff makes and put them at the end of the episode, we'd have a shit ton of episodes.
We should do that. But just Geoff's. Just assume that Joe and I don't make mistakes.
Yes. And don't use the beep button.
The dusk in us.
You just want to dive right into it?
I would love to, because I had to wait 5 years for it. And that whole segue between talking about the last album and this one felt like about 5 years.
Well, that anticipation must have gotten you and everybody else excited.
Oh, I got super excited, man.
Because I think this is their highest charting. It was #1 on the hard rock / metal charts on the Billboard Top 200. And
23 years, guys. We did it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good album. It's solid.
To me, dude, it's Axe to Fall Part 2. And as we talked about earlier, that is definitely not a bad thing.
No, it is not.
I think it's great that Converge is still here, still doing it, and doing it on a level that a lot of bands that have their beginnings don't do it. Like, they could have stopped making records 8 years ago and just did fucking reunion tours every 2 years, and it would have been fine.
The one thing that I give them credit for, that I shit on pretty much, well, every band that we do that's been around for 2+ decades outside of probably, Cannibal Corpse, is these fuckers haven't lost their intensity.
Not at all.
They still kick ass and take names, and that doesn't always happen. We've noticed that with a lot of bands, when they get older, they, sure, you're going to mellow out a little bit, but you still got to, keep that, if you're still going to be metal, you still got to be intense. And these guys keep it through and through, and that's probably my favorite thing about the band.
They have actual energy.
Yeah.
As opposed to a band that, again, substitutes dissonance for energy. They figured it out. It's about the presentation, not about how non-standard it sounds.
Yeah, I think it's about the passion and the artistry that they have. I guess now it kind of makes sense that he's doing all the artwork then, too. and that they're self-produced and all that kind of stuff. It's like Dan said, it's kind of like it's a self-contained machine, I guess. That's probably how I'd put it. It's like this perpetual machine, and all the parts just work so well together. Why do you need to go outside and have somebody else do it whenever you guys know what you want and you got the chops to make it happen? I wish that there was more people that wouldn't kowtow to the big record industry machine and do what these guys do. It's great. I love it. This ended up being more of a pleasant surprise of a discography than I thought it would be. I started out with like the dreaded, oh God, this is one of Dan's favorite bands. What the fuck has he got me into?
You heard the name Converge and immediately jumped to, this is just going to be dissonant metalcore for
and it is
5
that.
or 6 albums.
It is that.
But it's done with the purpose, though, I guess. It's not just noise for noise sake.
Some of the earlier records it is.
Yeah, but they figured it out pretty quickly.
That's one of the best things Converge did that other bands did not do. They figured it out. You can only do that so long before it is just predictable.
I think they're too big artists to do that. I think when you're a kid, it's like, look at how big my dick is, and so you record something that's horrifying. Like Cannibal Corpse is still doing that. Converge, on the other hand, if you look at Jake Abandon's artwork and you look at his vocal approach and the poetic nature of his lyrics, whether he's actually saying them on the records or not, they're too much artist to ever just put something out just for the sake of it being out there.
Yeah, like I think these guys, if you ask them to, I truly believe they could put out like one of the best emo albums of all time if you ask them to.
Well, get on that.
Yeah, I trust me.
And they're like, well, you didn't like You Fail Me? You ass?
Oh, that's more screamo. But no, I just mean like straight up old school emo. And I think that might be part of the reason why I like these guys. They have that artistry and that sensitivity to go with the brutality. It's a really cool mix, and I do enjoy that. I think that's part of the reason why they're you don't know what's coming next sometimes with them, is because they have all of those opposing energies working together, which is really unusual for a band to get that to last for 2+ decades.
Would that be your final thought?
Yeah, I think so.
Dan, what about you?
I think that if you are worried that Converge has lost their intensity or that they're getting old and that's why their stuff's getting more sensitive, go on YouTube and watch Jane live, which was recorded just a couple of years ago as the band was getting up there in the years. Listen to them play that album live flawlessly and then ask yourself, did these guys really run out of steam or are they making artistic choices? No other band sounds like Converge. For being a hardcore punk band, they are insanely original. And for that, I salute them.
I think if you want to hear dissonant hardcore done right, listen to Converge. In fact, start at the end of the discography and work your way backwards. Because by the time you get to Jane Doe, it builds towards that chaos. Whereas if all you do is listen to the older albums, you assume that this band is a one-trick pony of chaos and they change riffs every 10 seconds. Yes, they did that once or twice, but then they figured out how to write songs their way, and that's what I love about Converge. Jeff, what is your album of the week?
All right. Since I've always been a fan of the band Tesseract, their old singer, Ash, he's had a band he's put out a couple albums with, and it's pretty much like his own little pet project. It's called Voices from the Fuselage, and their newest album is Odyssey, the Founder of Dreams. And that's what I've been listening to.
Why don't you just text that to me and we'll call it even.
I know, that's a bunch of shit for you to type, isn't it?
Dan, what about you?
I've been listening to Full Collapse by Thursday.
Dan proving he can be sensitive too. And he's like, fuck you, Jeff.
You can't listen to Converge for 7 days and in any way, shape, or form undo the almost 20 years of Dan forcing you to listen to Converge weekly. So my album of the week is Axe to Fall. It's a good starting point for anybody that's never listened to Converge. It's also a good sitting point for those of us that have heard it all many, many times.
As you all know, we can be found on multiple social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Discord. We have our own Discord server, so check that out.
We talk about metal. Sometimes Dan plays Doom.
You can send us an email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. There's so many different ways you can get a hold of us. You join the Discography Discussion official group on Facebook. We're in there all the time posting memes, and we have a now playing section that has become quite a monster. You just take a screenshot on your phone of what you're listening to and throw it in there, and we will comment. At least Jeff and I will. And probably somewhere close to the 67 members that we have in the group now, which is incredible. We appreciate you guys, but if you have a question for us or a band suggestion, throw it at us at danandjoeshow@gmail.com to make an official band suggestion, and we will add that band to the list.
How come we haven't done the Celine Dion episode I keep talking about?
I keep deleting your emails.
Oh, okay.
And on that note, this has been episode 107 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion, and please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Give me your money.